Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikon here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And today, I'm going to be sharing with you my current Gunlance builds. Now, these are going to be very defensive builds. And some of you guys, once you see them, you're going to be going, Rurikon, why did you go so defensive on your Gunlance? Like, you already have a shield. Why do you need all of these other defensive skills? Now, I would like to explain that before we get into the builds themselves. Now, in Iceborne, the Gunlance's damage has been heavily skewed towards artillery. Like, the artillery portion of the Gunlance, the shelling, is going to be the biggest chunk of your damage. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't also deal significant damage with your raw damage attacks. Quite the opposite. You can also deal a lot of damage with those. However, in order for you to deal a lot of, raw damage in Iceborne, you're going to need to be hitting wounded parts. Now, the problem with wounding with the Gunlance is that you're going to have to clutch twice, or you're going to have to slap the monster like 3 times and then shoot him in the part that you want to wound. And not all the monsters in the game are going to give you the openings to wound something slap it 3 times and then shoot it. If you're doing the head, sometimes you can get away with it, but then again, the head is not always the best part to hit with your Gunlance, as most of you Gunlance mains out there will know. So when you combine those two things together with your damage being so much tied to the shelling and with the fact that, your raw damage you really want to be hitting wounded parts, those are two things that have kind of pushed me towards making more defensive builds. And I would even argue that outside of the training area environment where you can control a lot of things, you can hit a monster nonstop. So in that particular environment, if you put a Gunlance and you stack it with critical eye and critical boost and all of that type of stuff, naturally it's going to deal more damage than a defensive Gunlance. But in the actual field itself, I would argue that your earplugs and your evade extender and those types of skills are going to be the things that are really going to define whether or not you're going to be dealing damage on the monster. And that is the reason why my Gunlance builds are so defensive. If you want to go for an offensive Gunlance build, personally, I would recommend the elemental damage Gunlance build that I've done, because I think that is going to be the most damage that you're going to be seeing in Gunlance pokes. Now, with normal shelling, you can make something that deals more raw damage and all that, but I would still value the defensive skills more. Personally, again, so it's all going to be about personal playstyle. If you want to stack critical eye and critical boost and all that stuff, go right ahead. But for my testing, the damage difference was not significant enough that I was like, oh yeah, I totally want crit boost and all these other things. I was like, no, I'd rather have earplugs and keep shelling while the monster is roaring, because I'll get way more damage in that way than the other way around. But again, to each his own. Let's get started. So on the first build, this is the normal shelling build. We have the Safi's Venom Buster. Now, the first time that I tried doing a build for normal shelling with Safi, I actually went with the Paralysis Gunlance. But I then took that Gunlance to the Guiding Lands and I didn't get a single Paralysis proc. So I was like, okay, the Paralysis is just not really there. So I ended up going with the Venom Buster because at least you get poison. Not to mention that with the normal shelling Gunlance, as you know, the combo is pretty long, so you're not going to be able to get your combo in all the time. So being able to poison the monster to get a little bit of in-between damage while the monster is moving around was actually a good alternative in my opinion, but naturally you can also go for Blast. But I already have 2 Blast Gunlances that I use, and I wanted to do something different. So for the normal shelling, I went with Poison. The alternative to Poison, like I said, would be Blast if you would rather have that instead. So pick your poison, pun not intended. But anyway, in this particular Gunlance, we're going to be putting Zora's Magdaros Essence, which is a pain to get on Gunlances, let me tell you. As a matter of fact, the first Zora Magdaros Essence that I got on a Gunlance, I believe, was on my it was not the Awakened level. It's potential level 69.
Nice.
You really do need to suffer quite a bit to get Zora Magdaros Essence in these Gunlances. Or maybe you're lucky and maybe you can just get it no problem. But anyways, then you're going to go Sharpness Increase 6, Sharpness Increase 5, Sharpness Increase 5, and Natural Normal Shelling 2, so that you get maximum shelling level on the Gunlance itself. And now you guys are going to be like, why all that sharpness? Because I'm not taking anything to deal with the sharpness on the set itself. So I just put everything on the Gunlance, and this lasts you a good long while before you have to resharpen, so you don't really have to worry about sharpness all that much. That's why I picked those particular skills. If you plan on putting, like, a sharp decoration in there, or razor sharp spare shot. You don't need to have all that sharpness, but this is what I wanted. Now, on this Gunlance, I went, like I said, full defense, so health regen 2 and elemental status effect up. I could potentially trade the element status effect up for a defense deco. I still haven't really made up my mind about that, but for now I'll keep the elemental status effect up, but it really is whatever. Now on the build itself, on the Safi's Venom Buster, we're going to be putting an Artillery Jewel +4. Then you got Zora's Headgear Alpha, Magazine Jewel, and Shield Jewel. Golden Loon Mail Beta, we're going to be going for Divine Blessing. Like I said, these are very, very defensive sets. You got Destroyer Vitality in there, as well as Jumping, and another Artillery Deco to max out Artillery. Silver Soul Bracers Beta. You guys were like, what? You're not going for 2-piece silver, so what the hell is a Silver Soul Bracers Beta doing there? Because even without going for Slinger's Secret, just having 3 points of Slinger is really, really good. Like, even if you're not getting Slinger's Secret, the 3 points of Slinger are really, really good, which makes the itemization of the Silver Soul Bracers Beta really, really sweet. So that's why that particular piece is in there. They got Destroy Vitality in there and Jumping Jewel 2. Golden Loon Coil Beta maxing out your Divine Blessing Secret with another Destroyer Deco. Some of you guys will be like, what's the deal with Destroyer Decos? I told you guys I like Destroyer Decos to begin with. I just like them, period. But on top of it, every time you break apart, that's an opening. And if ever there's a weapon that needs as many openings as you can get, it's the goddamn normal shelling Gunlance. Getting an opening to landing your full combo in Master Rank? Good luck, son. Good luck. That's why I wanted the Paralysis one, but that didn't really work out all that well. So, you know, here we are. Then you got Zora Spurs Beta with Iron Wall +4 and Iron Wall 1. Then we wrap everything up with an Earplugs Charm. And Glider Mantle's got 2 Steadfast Jewels on there. I haven't made up my mind what I'm doing with the Glider Mantle yet for this build. Some things might change. For now, it's just a Stun Immunity Mantle. So you put the Stun Immunity Mantle, you're not going to get stunned while the mantle is up. And I believe it also resets the stun. So like, say you got hit a bunch of times and you're about to get stunned, you put on a mantle. I think it resets the threshold, but I'm not 100% sure. But basically, that's what I'm doing with my Glider Mantle right now. Then you got Temporal Mantle Maintenance Jewels, the usual stuff that you guys know. And looking at the final build, you got Earplugs 5, Artillery 5, Divine Blessing 5, Health Boost 3, Part Breaker 3, Evade Extender 3, Guard 3, Slinger Capacity 3, Capacity Boost, Flinch Free Guard Up, Stun Resistance, and Tool Specialist with Artillery Secret and Divine Blessing Secret. And I know, the argument's going to come, Urkon, I can block roars. Yes, and while you're blocking, I'm full bursting. Or while you're blocking, I'm Wyverns firing. I cannot tell you how many more Wyvern fires I can do than someone who does not have earplugs. Throughout the entirety duration of the fight, it'll probably total about, I don't know, 6, 7 Wyverns fires that you not using earplugs you're not going to be able to get. Because every time the monster roars, Wyverns fire to the face. Well, maybe not every single time. Every time that he roars and I'm close enough, Wyverns fire to the face. So that's a lot more Wyvern fires that you get to do. And there's a lot of openings that you tend to get to do Wyvern's fire right before the monster roars, which will get interrupted, which have gotten interrupted for me multiple times. So that's why all of my Gunlance builds are going to have earplugs, because more Wyvern's fires. And because we already have so much stuff to deal with the Wyvern Stake Blast, that just having this is just such a quality of life. Like, if you've ever tried Gunlance in Iceborne, you're like, dude, I don't like dealing with this Wyvern Blast thing and this other thing, blah, 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 blah. Try earplugs and see how much your life changes. But anyway, that was the normal Shelling Gunlance build, and this is the variant if you want to go and do Guiding Lands. Now, in this one, I don't have Fortify. I just put the Geology Jewel because I don't want to sacrifice any of the skills that I currently have on the set, besides the one that I already sacrificed, which is Evade Extender. But, you know, this one is if you want to take normal Shelling into the Guiding Lands, still have your Geology to get double the shinies. So, there you go. So, for the wide shelling build, I went with the Shatter Burster because, as you guys know, I like Blast quite a bit, and considering the amount of times that you're going to be poking the monster with wide shelling, there is high chances for you to get Blast procs, and as such, I went with the Shatter Burster here, and the Awakened abilities on it are going to be naturally Shelling level 2, because you need that to get as much wide damage as possible. We're going to need a slot upgrade because basically it was either that or another sharpness, and I'd rather have that slot, and you guys will see why, because I need one more skill this particular build. You got your Zora Magdaros Essence as well as 2 sharpness increases to try and make sure that your Gunlance does not lose its sharpness. Now, in this particular case, it's not going to be as important to maintain your sharpness as it is in the previous build, because if you take a look at the build, you'll see that we have a Mind's Eye Jewel on there. So, let's take a look at the rest of this. On the Shadow Burster itself, Artillery Jewel +4 and a Jumping Jewel. Actually, I should change things around here. Basically, it should be the Mind's Eye on the Shadow Burster because that's the new skill. Because other than that, this build is pretty much the same as the normal shelling build, so there really isn't a whole lot to say. The only difference is you have an additional slot on the weapon, and you put a Mind's Eye Jewel in there. And you guys are like, why the Mind's Eye Jewel? So that you never bounce on the monster. Because if you bounce when you're trying to do your poke shell poke, it's going to be a lot of downtime when you're recovering from the animation of bouncing the attack. So you just never bounce. And that way, you also don't have to worry as much about your sharpness. So long as you're above yellow, you're good. And that's a nice chunk of sharpness that you got in there before you actually have to worry about it. So this is what the wide shelling build looks like. Your combo is going to be poke, shell, poke, depending on how much damage your pokes are actually dealing. If your pokes are not dealing that much damage, then you're going to go shell, shell, poke, shell. But either way, most of the damage is going to be coming from shelling. Your pokes are there to also trigger the blast. So, you know, poke, shell, poke, or shell, shell, poke, shell, it's really up to you. The difference is not going to be that significant because you don't have that many offensive options. But yeah, this is a pretty cool playstyle as well, in my opinion. And it finally makes the Gunlance, you know, a lot cooler than having to deal with all of the nonsense that you had to deal with when it came to Rajang's Gunlance. Like, don't even get me started with that. The fact that that was the first wide shelling Gunlance to be added into the game, Jesus Christ. Now, some of you might argue, oh, Rurikon, Earplugs a little bit overkill on this particular build because your animation commitment isn't nearly as much. You're right, but the commitment to Wyvern's Fire is still the same. It's still the same thing. Wyvern's Fire is still really slow, and you still get those same openings right before roars that you can exploit if you have earplugs. That's why all of my Gunlance builds rock earplugs, and that's pretty much that. As with all of the builds that I've been sharing with you guys, here is the Guiding Lands variant on it. I'm sacrificing 1 jumping deco because moving around with this one is also as important as the other Gunlances, but I kind of feel like this one having lower animation commitment, you have a little bit more time to get to your targets, so it's not as big of a problem as with other Gunlance builds, so that's why I sacrificed that for the Geology deco to go into the Guiding Lands. And finally, what I would consider to be currently the most powerful playstyle for the Gunlance, which is the long shelling Gunlance. We're going to be going with the Shatter Burster again, but to be quite frank, in this specific Gunlance, whatever you want to go with is not really super important. So long as you get a Gunlance and you put long shelling level 2 on it and Zora Magdaros Essence, you're pretty much good to go. Everything else is kind of optional. You can do really whatever you want with this particular Gunlance, so long as you go with your shelling long 2. Because you're not going to be poking all that much, while I do sometimes go for the aerial slam down to get mounts and stuff. I don't tend to go for melee damage all that much. Most players will not go for melee damage when it comes to long shelling. So we go with the Shadow Burster just because I like explosions, but that's pretty much the end of that. You got 2 Sharpness 5s, your Zora Magdaros Essence, Slot Upgrade 4, and Shelling Long 2. I went with the Slot Upgrade 4 here because you don't need that much Sharpness. I would even argue that 1 Sharpness might be enough, and you might want to get something else in there. But you don't really need that much Sharpness with long shelling. Like, almost the default Sharpness that even comes with the weapon is almost good enough. This is just so that you have to sharpen even less. Because long shelling is not going to go through Sharpness like any of the other 2 shelling styles. It takes a little bit longer to get to a situation where it's problematic. But yeah, we go with this particular setup. In terms of your augmentations, we got Health Regen 2, as well as Defense Increase 1. And in the build itself, on Safi's Shatter Burster, we got Artillery Jewel 4, Charge of Vitality Jewel 4. We got Zora's headgear, and it's pretty much the same equipment that you have on the other builds. The difference here is that you're going to be needing the Charge of Vitality stuff, which means we're going to have less guard overall. We're only going to be able to get 1 guard on this build, and then we'll get 3 guard once we have the mantle up. Now, guard is also the least valuable skill in this particular build, in my opinion. because you're usually far away enough from the monster while you're shelling that your chances of getting hit are going to be reasonably low, which is also why I didn't make this build immune to stuns, instead focusing on other aspects of the build. If we look at the finalized build, you got Earplugs 5, Artillery 5, Divine Blessing 5, Health Boost 5, Focus 5, Extended 5, Sling Capacity, Part Breaker, Evade Window Capacity Boost, Guard 1 or 3 if you get the Mantle. Guard 1 is still good because every now and then the monsters might try to prevent you from loading your Worm Stake, and this gives you a higher chance of not getting knocked away by those attacks. Guard up and Tool Specialist when you have your Temporal Mantle up, Artillery Secret, and Divine Blessing Secret. I know that these builds are all extremely similar with very minor variations, but this, in my opinion, is the best way to play Gunlance right now, because if you want to go the offensive route, you can go there. And you can probably get faster times if you go the offensive route, you know, if that's what you really want to do. If you're a speedrunner, these are definitely not builds that you want to use because, you know, these builds rely a lot on defensive skills and you want to go for more offensive stuff. But in terms of survivability, these builds will usually get the job done regardless of whatever you are fighting. Like, you know, really challenging monsters, whatever, you can usually survive them and dish out a respectable amount of damage. But the reason I like them is because they let me just go balls to the walls. Whereas with, you know, more offensive, say for instance, normal shelling Gunlance builds, what ends up happening is you're getting interrupted a lot from roars. And sure, you can dodge roars and you can block roars and all of that. But if you think about all the things the Gunlance is doing, between getting ammo from the monster to maximize your Wyvern Stake Blast, placing the Wyvern Stake Blast, potentially wanting to wound certain parts of the monster, like all of this stuff, and then at the same time still trying to do your combos, there's just way too much maintenance for the weapon. And I say this as someone that is very familiar with using these Gunlances, so this is the stuff that I went with. It doesn't mean that it's the best stuff that you can possibly get. It's just stuff that I personally like to use. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. As per usual, if you guys enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the bell notification, all of that stuff. Comments, feedback in the comment section down below. Make sure to follow me on Twitch. I do stream on there quite a bit. Stay strong, and may your shields never break.